So let me know when the technology catches up and you see a title shot. Awesome, great. So today we're talking about public scholarship and service learning and community engagement together. I direct the Office of Service Learning and Community Engagement. If any of you didn't know that, then you're probably deleting those emails from me like right after you delete Josh's. So I am delighted to be able to. I see myself as a cheerleader primarily for getting our faculty and our campus involved in our community and doing cool stuff. So if you're at all interested in stuff beyond what we talk about today, I would love the opportunity to just sit down with you over coffee or over Teams and chat. So an overview of what we're going to do today didn't show up. There we go. Okay, my apologies. I should know how to do this by now. Overview of what we're going to do today. We're going to start off with just some general definitions, and then we're going to spend some time thinking about engaged scholarship and publication. Then we're going to look at 4, I believe, folks who I consider Upstate exemplars. By the way, there are a lot of amazing folks doing amazing things at Upstate. I just had to limit to 4. And then we'll close out with an invitation. So first, definitions. Definition of teaching and learning: the process of improving student learning through systematic investigation of teaching practices. And I start with the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in this chat on public scholarship, because we're blending service learning and public scholarship together. And so if we can put our disciplinary expertise and our pedagogy together with our research, that's when we hit that sweet spot in the center of the scholarship of teaching and learning. This is not the only way to do public scholarship. It's not the only way to do service learning, but it's I was going to say perhaps. It is without doubt the most effective and I think the most fun way to do both. Okay, so our next definition is engaged scholarship. And I know y'all can read, but it just feels good to read this off the slide, I guess. Engaged scholarship is too small for me to read. I need glasses, forgive me. The collaborative generation, refinement, conservation, and exchange of mutually beneficial and societally relevant knowledge that's communicated to and validated by peers in academia and the community. And I'm going to be honest with you, that is the first time I've read this out loud. It sounds a bit hoity-toity. I usually like things that are a little more casually phrased. So essentially, engaged scholarship is when we get out and we do real things that are reciprocally beneficial based on what the community says they need, not what we in the ivory tower believe the community needs, but what the community tells us that they actually need. And things that are relevant in today. And I think if we're doing that, then they are automatically relevant. And the scholarly part of it is that it really needs to be validated. So it may not be peer review in the sense of sending off the publication to a journal and then getting feedback, but our engaged scholarship still must be reviewed by others, both in the university and in the community. So engaged scholarship, on my Venn diagram, involves the community, it advances the academics scholarship, so my scholarship as an academic, and benefits the community. And when we put all those things together, again, we find a sweet spot in the middle. Next, we look at the definition of public scholarship: the diverse modes of creating and circulating knowledge for and with the publics and communities. That for and with, I put the bold in there. That's not from the Carleton College source. But again, the concept is that this is authentically reciprocal, that it is done together with the community, and not done from our ivory tower. So we have another Venn diagram, and then I think maybe we stop with the Venn diagrams after this. No, there's at least one or two more to come. But public scholarship involves reciprocity, which I've mentioned, I think, 3 times already because it's that important. That it not be, 4th time, from the ivory tower, but it be a joint effort. Involving civic responsibility, creativity, and public knowledge. We put all that stuff together in our sweet spot in the Venn here. We come up with public scholarship. On the outside circle is a list of products, which were too small for me to read unless I enlarged. So I figured some of you might be in the same situation. Public lectures, exhibitions, opinion pieces, conferences, and I assume by this conferences they're not talking about the standard academic conference that we all go to, but more publicly open conferences, articles in public scholarship journals, arts and media reports for community partners, and apps and websites. And those 2 bottom elements are getting much more significantly away from perhaps the tradition. But recognizing that when we write something, if we are writing that in order to inform and bolster the work of a community partner, that should still count as scholarship. We are doing the same kind of investigation and reporting. And instead of sending it off to a community of scholars where sadly a research suggests a very small number of us actually read anything more than the abstract, the community partner is likely to spend a lot of time and get much more benefit from our work than perhaps much of our work receives in the public, in the academic realm alone. And then apps and websites. I don't doubt this, but I have to admit that it's only within the last 3 years that I have become aware that writing an app or writing a website can be scholarship, that it can be done in a scholarly way and it can have an impact that is important. I add a couple of things to the list. Grants and competitive contracts. I think that each unit decides for themselves how a grant fits, but I believe in the LLC, grants fall under scholarship, or perhaps that's in the overall P&T. I don't remember. Darlene, it feels to me like I saw you on the call and that you have been chair.
Yeah, it is. Grants are under scholarship.
Thank you for confirming that wasn't just LLC. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And by the way, jump in anytime. I don't get to actually see your faces in this, but and don't raise your hand. Just start talking, and I'll shut up and listen to whatever you have to say. Be that a comment, a question, a suggestion. Please do jump in. So the circle didn't include books and book chapters, but I think if we are writing for a public audience, that is public scholarship. And community chats. The library is the local library here is often looking for people who will come in and give a talk about their area of expertise at a level where the community can understand and be interested in what it is that we're doing. I've talked at the library. I've talked at local museums. I've talked for the Daughters of the American Revolution. Most of my talks have been about celebrating dialect in this Southern community, where dialect is sometimes celebrated and sometimes denegated. But I think because those items take my scholarship and disseminate it to our community, it falls under the public scholarship realm. Although I will admit in the past, I probably have just tucked it under service. In the last 3 years, I'm coming to understand that public scholarship can be more than what I have traditionally assumed it to be.
Can I just ask a question real quick about
Sure.
what you just said? One of the things is that little understanding of what public scholarship means and how it impacts the community, and how you differentiate that is a really challenge. Is there a flip of a coin or something that you do to say, this is truly public scholarship? I've always perceived it as you have to show collaboration and support, interaction between you as the academic person and the community. So there's got to be a benefit for both.
Absolutely. And I mean, your question just segues beautifully into the yellow box that just showed up. That reciprocity, this is now, I think, the 5th or maybe 6th time that I've said it, but it really needs to be something that the community wants, and that not only I as an academic benefit from because I get to share my knowledge, which makes me happy, and goes down on my CV, but that there's actually an audience who cares. And then I think we need, in order to call this scholarship, we need to be very intentional about the design and implementation. We can't just, show up and start chatting off the top of our head and consider that to be scholarship.
That's what I was talking about, that we do presentations and you might do exhibits and things like that were very good, but how has it benefited the community? It's not just giving information, right?
Correct. There should be a feedback mechanism. And honestly, I have not done as well at this as I'd like to. And most of my talks that fall into this category happened prior to 3 years ago, when I actually had this revelation that this should and could be public scholarship. But I think in order to call something public scholarship, we need to have a question, a method, and a result. So I think before I go in and talk to a group, I should know what I want that group to take away from my talk. And then I should have targeted that group in my talk, and I should have some method of judging what the group walks away with. Now, we don't have if we're talking at a library or a community, at a museum or another community event, we don't have a guaranteed way to get their feedback. But I think if we open it up to say, I would love to continue this conversation. If you would be willing to share your contact information with me, I'm going to send you a survey or a follow-up question, or that kind of thing. We can turn this into something that demonstrates that we made a difference. If we go out and talk and everybody walks out with no more knowledge or no more desire to change their world, then we've kind of spouted hot air and haven't made any difference.
So Dave, this is starting to make me think about like something that might be like a public conversation that is more in line of like being interviewed, maybe for a newspaper, TV, something like that. Does that start becoming public scholarship at some point? Like that's one thing I'm always kind of thinking about, because I don't know, is that service to your profession, or does that become public scholarship? Like where are those lines?
I think that in pretty much all of our P&T stuff, the line is where you decide that the line is and can support strongly that the line should be there.
That has been my question too, Josh, because I see people who are doing good, like particularly with this COVID and healthcare, industry, doing good service to the community, but by working with groups to educate them on vaccinations and things like that, which is in our discipline. So it's not, and but I asked the question, is that scholarship or service? To me, it's more service. It's giving information that the community needed, but I'm just not, that's a real bad call, a hard call when I'm reviewing files and I'm seeing they put it in scholarship, and I'm saying, this description tells me it's service. How did they perceive, you can't ask that question. How did they perceive why they put it in scholarship? And you're right, it has to be argued. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit because I was.
Not at all.
Yeah,
that's a hard call.
Because I've always thought of scholarship of part of the activity you need to be adding to the body of knowledge. So when I think of like public lectures or community chats, I'm thinking of that as just dissemination. That might not be adding to the knowledge base. But if you're, I don't know, that's kind of where I'm always getting kind of stuck too. Like where is that line, and how do you, or maybe not necessarily where's the line, it's how would someone be able to describe or justify public scholarship to a skeptical audience that might be thinking that, oh no, that's got to be service because you're serving the community. Like how would that work?
So my answer to that lies in the bottom bullet, that there needs to be scholarly intention in the design and in the implementation. So we need to go with a question and a methodology, and then an analysis of outcome. And if we have those 3 points, those are the points that we include in a more traditional journal article. And in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that. Okay, so later we're gonna note that Ginny Webb did in fact speak on at least 2 news channels with quick blurbs about the COVID pandemic and response. And I would suggest, I mentioned them under the category of public scholarship. I'm not sure that there was scholarly intention in design, that she followed a specific methodology, and that she actually looked for outcomes. I'm not sure that she did that. But I think that it is that I think that it is an indication of her value that she's tapped. And I think that we need to find ways to follow those 3 steps so that we can send that message that when we can do those 3 things, that we will recognize that there is a contribution to the greater knowledge. And I think if we are following up with the assessment at the end, that's our contribution to the knowledge base. We're not learning more about COVID, but we are learning more about how our community views and responds to COVID. And that's a contribution, and it's a really important contribution. Did I sell you?
Yes. No, I think that was a good response, because thinking about it from a different perspective, you're right. You can, and I guess that's again maybe the whole ivory tower thing. I'm too busy looking at things in one direction, from that perspective. But that's interesting.
And I am attempting to preach this stuff, and I do believe this stuff, but I'm also recognizing that prior to 3 years ago, when I did more of this stuff, I didn't include any of the assessment. I gathered knowledge, I made a plan, I targeted the audience I expected to appear, and then I went away happy. And I think that that's where I was falling down on I have no indication other than my heartfelt belief that my talks made a difference to somebody somewhere. I have no evidence of that. And I think that therefore my talks can't be considered scholarship.
I think this type of conversation is definitely, and I know you have conversations like this a lot with the faculty as you go around and kind of talk about these topics, but those are the types of questions that I get from other faculty, like basically how to define public scholarship and how to make the distinction between, kind of like my question, Darlene's question too, how do you make that distinction between service, whether it's to the profession or to the community, and public scholarship? And I think I think that'll help faculty kind of think about it in a different way, so that they maybe see it in a different valued position.
Yeah, this is not something that happens only at Upstate, right? These questions are happening everywhere across the academy, and they're great questions, and I think they help us move forward. And moving forward, now this next slide honestly now kind of feels anticlimactic, but I want to read it anyway. Definition of community engagement. This, by the way, is not Dave, not my sole authorship, but rather a group of probably 10 people that contributed to our formal definition of community engagement at USC Upstate. The collaborative relationship between institutions of higher educations and their broader communities, local, regional, state, national, and global, for the mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge, resources, and resources in a context of partnership, and now for I think the 8th time, reciprocity. So I'm pointing out that it's the 8th time that the reciprocity shows up there because it is that important. That this is a bi-directional thing, and that we are not just trying to do for, but work with.
Dave, may I
Please.
ask? I think Selena had a question.
Oh. I'm not able to see the chat. Is there?
Yeah, no, I had,
Hi.
I had my hand up before, and then I realized that there was no way that you were seeing the hand up.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
But no, it's okay. It's okay. I was just gonna, I just really liked what Josh had been saying before about dissemination, because we get in our little box that dissemination has to be in a peer-reviewed scholarly journal, but dissemination is part of knowledge creation, and dissemination can go anywhere. and I think elevating dissemination as part of scholarship, it helps to understand that, is this scholarship versus is this service divide? So if you're disseminating new knowledge, I don't care who you're telling it to, like it is, as long as it's doing that work of disseminating new knowledge, I think that's important. That's all. I liked that idea. That's all.
Awesome. I'm glad you broke in, and I'm sorry that I didn't. Well, I don't have the themes on my screen so that I can see. Maybe now I can. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so moving on. Overview. Then the next major component that we're looking at is thinking about engaged scholarship and publication, looking at the products, the identifying some thoughts in terms of P&T, a brief mention that funding is available, and then some recap of some advice that we got last year from a journal editor that I thought was so important and so relevant to this talk that I just brought it back in. And that's what we want to do here. So intentional, at least in the ideal situation, we are going to think through our public scholarship from the beginning. As we start, we want to plan a plan for what we want to find, what we want to disseminate, how we are going to disseminate that, and then how we're going to assess what we've disseminated. Even though that is, I think, what the ideal situation is, one way to decide which topic we're going to look at is just what you're passionate about. If you're not motivated by something, you're probably not going to be doing a great job at it. And yet we need to beware the loss of objectivity, or at least the perceived loss of objectivity. If we are overly passionate about something, and that comes across to the academic audience, lots of our colleagues, and I will tell you that I occasionally wonder about people who are talking passionately about something, and I don't see the evidence of the scholarship embedded. And I think, and that's something that I think we need to be kind of aware of. And then if you haven't thought about something from the outset, but it starts to go extremely well, or spectacularly badly, and this is, I, in the last 2 years, have started to campaign for let's publish things that go bad as well as things that go well. I've only honestly done it once in a conference setting, and it's kind of embarrassing. But I think that the lessons that we can learn from talking about things that didn't go well are sometimes more powerful than the lessons we can learn from the things that went well. So that's kind of my soapbox. But if you weren't planning on this from the beginning, there may still be ways to turn this into scholarship, which you can then share. So the idea, the fact that we maybe didn't start the data collection in 2019, but we now want to look at something that was happening in 2019. I think we can find ways to still make that happen in a rigorous way. I in my classroom, I like the think, pair, share technique, which is where I put students in I give students a question or lead them with some thoughts, and then I give them 2 minutes or 3 minutes to talk with a partner and then share it out, because we are in this environment on Teams. I'm not going to send you into pairs and have you talk about this, but I would love to hear what your experiences have been. What have you done in something that you consider public scholarship? How did you get there? Please.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Lee in the School of Education, coordinator of Call Me Mister. I do have a question about intentional. My question is, how far out is considered the outset of a study of any type of scholarship work? And if you need context to that, May 1st of 2019, South Carolina SC for Ed hosted the teacher walkout. It picked up a lot of publicity, particularly the day before, and that's when I made the decision to go. And it was my thought process to figure out what were the underlying factors as to why people were there, beyond those who were involved in SC for Ed, SCEA, or PSTA. And it was en route there that I started thinking about research questions and deciding upon who I would speak with. For something like that, the outset would have been 3 hours. However, I did speak with them. I did have outcomes. So I would like to, and I still have the data, I still have the recordings, I still spoke with everyone, I still have the literature review, and I haven't done anything with it because, well, I'm not sure that it can be seen as intentional, or to what degree is the outset valid. So my question remains, how far out is the outset?
Okay, so I think that question is one that you probably actually want to take to a journal editor. I mean, my answer would be it falls under opportunistic. And passion as well, I think. And I think that because you went through the rigor of documenting, of recording, and it's not just your sort of vague recollections of what happened in 2019, but it is you have the artifacts. I don't feel like it's too late at all. Because it's 2 years out, then you need to sell to the editor why people are going to care about it in 2022 when this actually gets published. And I think if you can make that argument, or if you can make connections, or perhaps follow up with either those exact people or with people in similar roles to see what they are thinking and feeling today as opposed to what they felt in 2019, then I think you have a phenomenal foundation on which to build some scholarship.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely, that's a great. I'm excited. I don't even exactly know what that was, but I'm excited to hear more. I think if you follow up, send me a copy of. If you'd like, send me a copy, and I'll do a final edit. Just a proofread for you,
Okay.
and then you have a reason to send it to me, and I get to read it just because it's fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Anybody else want to share some thoughts about your own public scholarship? I conducted a little mini test there. In a face-to-face presentation for faculty or for students, typically if I'm silent for 20 seconds, somebody is going to say something. And so I went exactly 20 seconds in this environment, and y'all held out. Nobody else jumped in. So we're going to roll. And I am not going to pursue that as my next line of scholarship. As to I'm sure somebody has already done that. But okay, community products, things that I would argue are scholarship, though they are directly targeted toward a community instead of our more traditional approaches. So grants, and I think particularly grants that are community facing. Michelle Covington comes to mind with I think it's a grand total of $1 million for a grant that she did with the Spartanburg Community Police group. It's much bigger than just a police force, but that is a community product, and that grant, in my opinion, counts as scholarship. Reports and policy briefs that we create with a community, doing seminars with a community partner, doing designs, presentations, websites, displays, brochures, forums, and newsletters. I think arguably a newsletter should not be placed on the same status as a $1 million grant, but I think that there is an element to disseminating that information, and it's something to be celebrated. And we need to make our case for scholarly intention in design and implementation. What is it about this? And if it's a newsletter, then what is it about that newsletter that makes it fit into the category of scholarship? Applied scholarship, including apps, curricula, and Dr. Lee, perhaps other educational materials. Not that the rest of us don't also teach, but you in education, I think. Okay. I mean, it just sort of popped in my mind, and I said it before I thought deeply about the fact that we are all educators. Guides, handbooks, policies, research briefs, social marketing, training, and technical assistance tools. I think in each of these cases, again, we need to make the case And I think that in many cases, we want to both blend with service and distinguish from service. So I think that in that Venn diagram, if we look at teaching and scholarship and service, I think that there are overlapping domains. Franz, 2009, in producing a model on public scholarship, says research, teaching, and all outreach and outreach all inform each other to best address complex issues. So it's not just about making our lives easier when we go to the sweet spot and blend service and teaching and scholarship, but rather we're promoting the best kind of scholarship if that scholarship can advance the knowledge in the academic community, advance the application in the public sphere, and advance our students' understanding of our disciplines. So involving our students, service and teaching and scholarship.
It looks like we got a question from John.
Please, John. I'm sorry. Yes, please, John, go.
Not to worry, not to worry. It's not so much a question as a comment, and
Absolutely.
it one of the things, and you may be going to get to that, is to think about where's the platform where you store your public scholarship. How do you make it available to others? And I say that with intention, and Josh can attest to this. One of the things we're working on with him is University of South Carolina, Columbia has a portal called Scholar Commons, and we're trying to do an Upstate, what do I want to call it? Sort of a version of that as well. And that would be a place where, particularly when you're starting to do reports and different types of public scholarship presentations, that would be a place to store that. So I'm being a little devious in that I'm asking you a question and giving you an answer, but just something to keep in mind. And we're not quite ready to launch that yet, but we're hoping to be able to do that in the near future. And so I'll hopefully have more to share about that in the future. And I'm going to send you post the link to it in just a second for U of SC. Awesome.
That's super cool. And John, no apologies needed. I mean, comments are welcome. You don't have to try and disguise it as a question. Bring it in as a comment. That's awesome. It is one of my dreams to create an online repository for student produced items. I was going to call them scholarship, but not all of them are going to be scholarly. But I would love to have an open repository of things that students create. If students are researching about jazz in Spartanburg, and as Spartanburg was kind of a hot spot in our region for jazz. And if our students are writing about that and it just goes to a professor and that's it, that's kind of sad. I would love to be able to get a repository where our student work, as well as our faculty contributions, could be made available for our entire community, especially for those things that are relevant to our community. John?
Well, funny you should mention that. I feel like this is not planned, I promise, but that's one of the things, like our head of reference and research, Virginia Canoni, is working on with Dr. Rupel to see if we can put the student journal and student research journal and the research symposium contents there moving forward, and perhaps even going backwards in the past. But it's kind of an awkward term, an institutional repository, but that often is the idea. It varies from place to place how it's used. When I was at University of Pittsburgh, it was very faculty centric, but you can you can have students put works there. The like capstone projects or other papers they want or other works they want to share. It doesn't just have to be a paper, a document, or text. So we have a ways to go before we're ready to kind of launch something like that and give parameters and how to upload things and make them available through Creative Commons licensing or copyright. But it would tie into that definitely. And what's heartening to me is to think, okay, I am not on the wrong track with this. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
That's great. John, please include me in the conversations. I'd love to be involved to whatever degree I can.
I would like that very much. Thank you.
And to follow up on that, the Upstate, the Student Research Journal is a place for those types of works. It doesn't, those manuscripts do not necessarily, they don't have to be a product of the traditional, in a lab mixing chemicals types of research. We accept lots of different types of disciplines and different types of scholarly works that are coming from the students. So, a paper about the history of jazz and Spartanburg County would be a perfect submission for that journal. And I think the lineup of manuscripts that we have that were submitted this year is a really good collection to kind of show that we are welcoming a very wide range of disciplines in that. So, and yes, we're definitely hoping that we can get the online sort of version of this launched hopefully in the spring. So.
And I'll try to have more to share about that in the coming, let's say months. Let's be generous and say months. But thank you both for that. And thank you, Darlene. I'm happy to talk with you about that too.
A quick commercial. The Office of Service Learning Community Engagement offers awards and course support funds, and just as of this year, competitive course reallocations, and I'm hoping to grow those. SARS also has multiple programs. I'm looking at the clock and recognizing we have 13 minutes left. So let me just say that there are some really cool journals that are out there. There are some links, and I believe Josh is going to share this this PowerPoint presentation. So read, talk, engage, and then learn from others. And I'm just going to step to the next slide, talking about learning from others. Here's a list of professional development opportunities that are out there. If you're, again, the slideshow should come to you. If not, send me a message. I'd be happy to share it with you. And I promised some information from Mary Beth Lima, who addressed us last year. And she is the editor for the Community Engagement and Scholarship, the Journal of Community Engagement and Scholarship. Things that she shared, and I'm going to go quickly through these. Don't be a perfectionist. If you're a perfectionist, you may well wind up strewn along the ground underneath the ladder. She suggests that we live by the 80-20 rule. I know that this 80-20 rule is accurate. I have a hard time letting something go before I get to the 100% perfection. But I think maybe that's why I thought it was so important that I wanted to keep it in this slideshow. It's okay to let something be slightly imperfect, particularly if it's going to go through a review process and someone else is going to look at it and then give you feedback, and then you have the opportunity to redo that and make it better. More advice from Mary Beth. It's all about the writing. And she says, and I've heard this from multiple places, resolve to write 1 page a day. She adds 1 lousy page. That is to say, don't even worry that it's good. Just get it down, fix it later. Start in the middle if you need to. Your first draft is going to suck. Yep, that's all right. And then figure out when is your best time to write. Block that out and don't let anything interrupt with your writing process. The most common rejections in her journal are a lack of fit, that what you're submitting doesn't actually fit into the journal's domain, or that it's not honestly new. So she suggests that we who want to publish in her journal and other journals like it, read from that journal. And then think about what we have to share as a gift, that we have something to offer others and that we want them to read it. And so we're excited about it. And at least for her journal, she says, use narrative and storytelling. And I have heard that from lots of people within the particularly the service learning community engagement area. They want narrative and storytelling as that catches people's attention, and the takeaways are greater. From the editor's chair, she says, contact the editor. And Walter, you mentioned, I suggested to you that you might want to reach out to the editor and ask them, find a journal that you believe is relevant, read some articles from it that seem connected to what you want to do, and then ask. From her editor's chair, she says, if we haven't responded to a review of yours, we're super busy, and it's okay to reach out and say, hey, how's this coming? But be respectful, but it's all right to do that. She says, don't see revise and resubmit as a bad outcome. Make it work. Take the advice, move forward. Advice from Tom McConnell, who is an author in LLC, a very successful author. In a 2005 workshop, Tom said, don't let a rejected submission sit on your desk. And Tom added, for more than 24 hours. In my domain, I can't fix something in 24 hours. Tom is a creative writer, and his point was, if audience A doesn't like it, audience B might well like it. For me as a linguist, if I get a rejected submission, they're generally telling me what I did wrong, and I need more than 24 hours to fix it. But I have tried to make my personal rule of thumb no more than 2 weeks on my desk before I resubmit. To a rejected submission, resubmit to another journal. And on occasion, I have gotten things back that said, this just sucks. And I said, okay, I'm going to focus on something else. But in general, I have resubmitted to another journal within 2 weeks after making some significant revisions, and I've had a high rate of success with that. And I thank Tom for that advice maybe 16 years ago. So I do want to get to some Upstate examples. We don't need to spend a lot of time with these, but these folks are available. Find them, talk to them. Araceli Hernandez Laroche is the director of our El Centro Center of El Centro. And she does a ton of publicly engaged things. She has also in the past and the future done service learning and published on that. One thing I wanted to bring out is that it's beautiful when service learning and other courses can be collaboration between two domains. So in hers, it was French and criminal justice working together. Populates the class in a class that otherwise might not make, but creates a super cool experience for students as well. She's also engaged in publishing on public scholarship in the humanities, and she is doing public scholarship in the humanities. We have a new tool called Collaboratory, wherein we are capturing the community engaged activities of folks. This is a commercial. For Araceli, she put all of her information, not all, perhaps a lot of her information into this database, and I was able to then create for her a report that she used in her P&T materials. If you'd like that, send me a copy. Send me an email. I can send you a copy, not just inside the PowerPoint, but a big one that you can actually read. Toshua Kennedy in nursing has done a lot with public health and blending service. 3 titles of scholarship works that she's done. Unmasked, and this was, I think, in 2017. So she wasn't talking about a COVID mask, but Unmasked to a Positive Triumph. Women with HIV share the benefits of showing their faces through photo voice. So she was doing things in the community that helped women with HIV to work through some of their challenges, and then she published about that. So that blending of scholarship and service in very intentional and amazing ways. And the other two titles I'm going to skip because I do want to get through the rest of these. Alex Lorenz, for both, I think, passion and opportunity, is doing translation of German letter collection. Someone named Brad LeFew reached out, I believe, found Alex and said, hey, I've got some materials that need to be, that are in German, and most people aren't able to read these materials. They came from the Nazi era and represent both people that supported the Nazis and people who were traumatized by Nazis. And Alex uses his students as well as his own time and effort to translate materials, and those are now being published in the South Carolina Digital Library. Super cool stuff. Alex also does super cool stuff engaging in the community, particularly the German community and the Slavic communities. And exciting stuff. Find Alex, find me. I can tell you a little bit about what he does, and then introduce you to Alex for a deeper conversation. Ginny Webb is we talked about Ginny earlier, and that she has consulted for the news media and shown up on Channel 4 and 7 at least. She's also been very active in our campus engagement and spreading information to our community beyond campus, particularly with relevance to COVID. She's also published scholarship on COVID. So she is one who has the sweet spot of the service and the scholarship together. And she has also published on service learning. I think it's super cool. By the way, this is not a complete list of Ginny's publications that you see on the screen. But she published on learning through teaching, a microbiology service learning experience in which she talks about how she does this in her classroom. And then she was like, wow, this is interesting and fun. And so she turned that into a review of microbiology service learning, because as she was preparing her first article, she noticed that there was not a review in her domain. So she used that as an opportunity to publish a second paper within that domain and building on the foundation that she set in the first one. She also publishes on public health things, the microbial microbial contamination. Okay, the things that she was doing in her service learning stuff, she also published on in more traditional journals. So she is doing a great blending of those three domains that our PNT resides on. And so my invitation to you is, don't forget mentoring students. With service learning, your students are going to be involved in your project. For those who stand out, give them an additional opportunity. Say, hey, we have a research assistant opportunity. Would you be interested in doing more on this? Grant writing opportunities. When you are involved in your community, the opportunity to write grants expands. Collaboration with colleagues is something I always want to support, and connections with the community. If you feel like you've got wonderful connections with your community, share. Let others of us join in that connection and expand the power that your community has. And if you need connections with your community, come talk to us, and we can work with you and see how we can create reciprocity with our community and do cool things. So let's chat about SLICE in your classes, about SLICE in your scholarship, about SLICE in your service. And just another quick commercial, we have that collaboratory tool that will will enable you to capture the cool things that you're doing in terms of community engagement. We can celebrate that. We're looking forward to making that publicly available so that we can kind of brag to our community. We're looking forward to exciting and fun things in community engagement and service learning. And I think I have 25 seconds left. So if anybody has a 10-second comment, we can take 2 of those. I can't wait 20 seconds. The time's going to be over.
Thank you, David. This was absolutely fantastic. I did forward everyone that is on the call. I forwarded the slides to you, so that should be in your email, in your inbox. If not, let me know. I'll make sure you get those. If there's any questions, feel free to ask David now as our last few seconds tick away.
Well, and I am happy to stay. I just want to be very aware that other people are going to have more things to do, meetings, etc. I'm happy to talk to you now. I'm happy to talk to you on over coffee. I'm happy to talk to you on Teams. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you showing up. It was a lot of fun to talk to you. I learned cool stuff.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited in these days of COVID and overwork and stress that we all have. Fatigue, that's the word I was looking for, especially sometimes meeting fatigue. I'm delighted that so many of you showed up and participated. Thank you. Really appreciate it.